My name is Raymond Keller. I'm 62 years old, and I live in Boise, Idaho, in the same modest three-bedroom home where my late wife and I raised our only child. I'm a contractor by trade, a father by devotion, and a man who, until recently, believed that sacrifice was the truest expression of love. But everything changed the day my son told me I wasn't welcome for Christmas. When my son said I shouldn't come to his house for the holidays, I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't even ask him to explain himself again. I simply smiled, grabbed my coat from the back of his designer sofa, walked out to my truck, and drove away. The moment I closed the door behind me, I already knew what I would do next. By New Year's Day, the mortgage payments were gone, erased from my budget, cut off at the source. And believe me, that was only the first step. Before I tell you my complete story, subscribe and comment where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this story travels. You won't believe what followed. I could make my honey bourbon turkey this year. I had said just a few minutes before everything cracked open, settling deeper into my son's new sectional couch. The leather was so smooth it squeaked when you shifted your weight. The one your mom used to beg me to make every Thanksgiving. Remember how she said it tasted better than her grandmother's recipe? My words hovered in the cozy living room, blending with the faint scent of my daughter-in-law's expensive cinnamon candles. My son, Evan, sat beside me, his wedding ring catching the glow from their towering 12-foot Christmas tree. I watched his posture shift, shoulders tightening, breath shortening, as if he were bracing for a blow. "Dad, unfortunately, you shouldn't come here for Christmas this year." The sentence struck like a direct hit to the chest. I blinked. What? What do you mean I shouldn't come? Why wouldn't I be welcome? Evan didn't look at me. Not really. His eyes stayed fixed on the marble coffee table, the very one I helped him choose last spring when his wife, Brittany, decided their old furniture didn't fit her aesthetic anymore. "Britt's parents are coming," he murmured, "and they prefer it if you didn't join." My hands went cold. "They prefer," I repeated. "It's just easier this way, Dad. You know how her family is about holiday traditions. They have their own routines, their own way of doing things." His voice shrank with every word. I scanned the room. The silk curtains I'd paid for when Brittany complained their neighbors could see inside, the hardwood floors bought with funds from my home equity line of credit, the crown molding I'd install myself to make the space feel more mature. Every inch of their home carried the fingerprints of my sacrifices. "Their own way," I echoed slowly. "And what way is that, Evan?" He flinched. "Dad, please don't make this harder." Through the kitchen archway, I could see Brittany's professional-grade mixer on the counter, the one she needed for her seasonal baking phase, a phase that lasted all of 3 weeks and cost me over $1,800. I doubted it had been turned on more than twice since October. "Where exactly should I spend Christmas?" I asked quietly. Evan's face fell. "Maybe visit Aunt Marlene? Or we could do something the weekend after?" The weekend after. As if Christmas were a dentist appointment, he could reschedule for convenience. My knees protested as I pushed myself up from the couch. "I see. Dad, wait." But I was already moving, walking past photos lining their hallway. With each passing frame, my presence in their lives grew smaller, until finally I all but disappeared. I reached the front door. Its brass handle felt cold, unfamiliar. Without turning around, I said, "Tell Brittany's parents something for me." He swallowed audibly. "What?" "Merry Christmas." The winter air slapped my face as I stepped onto the porch. Behind me, I heard Evan call my name, once, just once. Then came the soft click of the front door closing for good. Final. Absolute. I sat in my truck a moment before starting the engine, staring at the soft glow of Christmas lights in the windows of homes where fathers were wanted, where they were part of the tradition, not an inconvenience. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Evan, probably ready with rehearsed apologies and half-hearted guilt. I didn't pick up. I drove into the cold night, leaving behind the warm, curated perfection of a house I'd bankrolled, but never truly belonged in. The heater hummed in my pickup as I drove through Boise's quiet neighborhoods. Every intersection carried memories from when Evan was young. Little league games, Sunday drives, trips to the hardware store where he'd sit on my shoulders pointing at everything he wanted to fix someday. But that boy was gone. The man he'd become, that was Brittany's influence. her priorities, her version of what was appropriate. And in her world, I was nothing more than an occasional obligation, useful only when a bill needed paying. I stopped at a red light on Overland Road. A young father loaded Christmas presents into the back of his SUV while his kids pressed their tiny hands against the fogged windows, vibrating with excitement. That used to be us, before the money, before the contempt wrapped in polite smiles, before Brittany turned me into a debit card with feelings she didn't want to deal with. The numbers started rolling through my mind, uninvited but unstoppable. $2,900 every month for 5 years. $2,900 for a mortgage I didn't live under and wasn't welcome in. My calculator had long given up on making sense of it all. I pressed harder on the accelerator as the light turned green, the truck roaring through the intersection like it understood my anger. Just around the corner was the bank where I'd refinance my house, the home my wife and I built together to help them with their down payment. I could still hear the loan officer's cautious voice. "Mr. Keller, are you absolutely sure? You're taking on a significant burden for someone else's investment. Someone else's investment. Not my son's future. Not my family's stability. Someone else's investment." The realization burned. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the sun had fully set. My porch light flickered, a repair I'd been putting off because every spare dollar of mine had gone to Evan and Brittany's lifestyle upgrades. Inside, the house felt hollow without Lydia, my wife. She'd been gone for 7 years, but moments like this made it feel fresh again. My phone rang just as I locked the door. "Brittany." "Perfect. I've been waiting a long time for this conversation." I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Raymond," she said, her voice dripping with syrupy politeness, the same tone she used when asking me to cover unexpected expenses. "I heard about the little misunderstanding between you and Evan." "Misunderstanding," I repeated. "That what we're calling it?" "Raymond," she sighed dramatically. "You know how my parents are. They're sophisticated people. Very traditional. They expect a certain atmosphere." "A certain atmosphere," I echoed, meaning a pause. "Then, they're simply not accustomed to your kind of cooking, or your style of holiday traditions." My jaw tightened. "My kind? You know," she continued carelessly. "Loud music, heavy food, very working class. My parents are educated, Raymond. They enjoy conversations about literature, politics, art, not stories about laying tile or repairing roofs." The words hit harder than any physical blow. 8 years of swallowing insults. 8 years of letting her chip away at my place in my son's life. 8 years of being treated like hired help. "My cooking," I said evenly, "is the same food you ate every Sunday for 3 years when you were broke. The same meals you said reminded you of home." "That was different," she snapped. "We were appreciative then, and now you're not?" "Now," she said coldly, "my parents are involved. They're refined people. Not whatever you think I am," I finished. She exhaled sharply. "Let's not be dramatic. This isn't about class or education." "Yes," I said calmly, "it is. And you've made that perfectly clear." "Raymond, we're done here," I said. "And Brittany." Silence. "Be very careful how you talk about Lydia." And I hung up. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't racing. For the first time in years, I felt grounded. Centered. Alive. I walked to my desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out a thick manila folder, one I'd been avoiding for months. Inside, 5 years of bank statements, mortgage confirmations, receipts for furniture, appliances, landscaping, repairs, everything I'd paid for. Everything they'd drained from me. I spread the documents across the table like evidence at a crime scene. It was time to stop the bleeding. The stack of documents on my kitchen table looked like the wreckage of a life I hadn't realized I was sacrificing. 5 years of financial transfers. 5 years of covering emergencies that weren't mine. 5 years of pouring my entire retirement into a house whose door had just been shut in my face. $2,900 every month. $34,800 a year. Nearly $175,000 drained from my accounts since the day Evan and Brittany bought their forever home. And now I was not appropriate for Christmas. I leaned back in my chair, the old wood creaking beneath me. My kitchen was outdated, my appliances older than my son, my windows fogging at the edges from the cold. But these were things I'd put off for years. Because they needed help. Because they said they were struggling. Because I believed family came first. I'd been a fool. My phone buzzed again, another call from Evan, no doubt, but I ignored it. Instead, I reached for my calculator. The first year, $34,800. The second year, $34,800. By the third year, I'd stopped buying new clothes entirely. By the fourth, I switched to discount grocery stores. This fifth year, I'd been eating oatmeal for dinner 3 nights a week just to make it work. The total stood at $174,000, not counting the down payment, not counting the appliances, not counting the endless utilities they forgot to pay, not counting the new roof I'd helped fund last spring. My wife, Lydia, had left me life insurance money when she passed, a small cushion for emergencies. They'd burned through almost all of it. My retirement? Barely hanging on. My future? Spent on granite countertops and hardwood floors in a house I wasn't welcome in. I exhaled slowly, pressing both palms against the table. The anger was there. It simmered beneath the surface. But what I felt most was clarity. A rare, icy kind of clarity that came only when a man decided he was done being used. I picked up my phone again, but not to call Evan. I dialed my bank. The automated voice chirped cheerfully. For English, press 1. I pressed, then waited through the usual maze of menus before a human voice finally came through. Customer service, this is Emily. How can I assist you today? I need to cancel an automatic payment, I said, calm as a winter river. Of course. Can I have your account number? I read it off. She typed for a moment. I see a recurring payment here. $2,900 to First Mountain Mortgage. Account ending in 1134. Looks like it's been active for 5 years. Would you like this canceled effective immediately? I looked around my kitchen, the chipped paint, the creaking cabinets, the refrigerator that hummed like it was dying. Yes, I said. Immediately. Done, she said. Is there anything else I can help you with today? No. And for the first time in years, that word didn't feel like surrender. It felt like freedom. After hanging up, I gathered the statements and mortgage receipts and shoved them back into the manila folder. Then I walked to my fireplace, opened the iron grate, and struck a match. I dropped the first page in. The flame curled around the numbers, devouring the evidence of my self-sacrifice more eagerly than I expected. Page after page followed, statements, receipts, past due notices I'd paid on their behalf, even the photo of the house when they first bought it. It all burned. The fire felt warm on my face, warmer than anything I'd felt since Lydia died. My phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't even look at it. Instead, I poured myself a glass of the nicer whiskey I kept hidden away. I'd been saving it for a special occasion, and tonight counted. I raised my glass toward the framed photo of Lydia on the mantel. To the man I'm becoming, I whispered, and to the one I should have been a long time ago. I drank, and for the first time in years, the liquor didn't taste like guilt. It tasted like relief. The next morning dawned bright with a thin layer of frost on the grass outside. I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh cup of strong black coffee, the good Colombian roast I never used to buy because it was too expensive. Not today. My phone buzzed at 10:47 a.m. Brittany, here we go. I muttered, taking a slow sip before answering. Raymond, she snapped immediately, the polite tone gone, replaced with irritation so sharp it could cut glass. I need you to pick up my parent from the airport. I blinked once. Slowly. Excuse me. They're flying in from Seattle, she continued, unfazed. Flight 201. Landing at 1:55. They'll be at baggage claim, carousel 4. You're the only one free during the day. I set my mug down gently. So gently it felt like an act of war. Did you forget our conversation from yesterday? I asked. I really don't have time for whatever that was, she said briskly. Raymond, listen. My parents need transportation. You're available. And that's what family does. Helps each other. The hypocrisy was so breathtaking, I almost laughed. Is that so? I asked quietly. Yes, that's so, she barked back. Now be sure you wear something decent. My father notices things like that. I stared at the wall for several seconds, then said, Sure, Brittany. I'll take care of everything. Good, she said, relieved. Just don't embarrass. I hung up before she could finish. I took another sip of my coffee. I'd already finished half the morning crossword by the time her parents would have been landing. 2:15 p.m. I was sitting in my favorite recliner with a fresh cup of Earl Grey tea, the newspaper in my lap. The crossword was finished. The sun lit my living room in soft winter gold. My phone buzzed. Brittany calling. I'll let it ring. 2:47 p.m. Another call. Where are you? My parents can't find you. Asterisk asterisk. I turned my phone face down and flipped to the sports section. 3:30 p.m. 6 calls. A dozen texts. 3 voicemails. 4:15 p.m. My phone started ringing nonstop. Brittany. Then an unknown number, her parents, no doubt. Then Evan, then Brittany again. I stood, walked calmly to the kitchen, and turned my phone off entirely. Perfect silence. I made myself a grilled cheese and tomato soup. The kind I loved but rarely let myself enjoy because it felt too indulgent. I ate slowly, savoring every bite like it was a victory meal. Because it was. Somewhere across town, Brittany's parents were probably pacing an airport curb, wondering why their personal chauffeur hadn't shown up. The thought made the sandwich taste even better. I washed my dishes, dried them, and set them neatly in the cabinet. At 5:00 p.m., someone began pounding on my front door so hard the frame rattled. I set down my tea, took my time walking over, and peered through the peephole. 3 figures stood on my porch. Brittany, her father, Ronald Pierce, her mother, Elaine. Their expressions? Pure fury. I opened the door just enough to let in the cold air. What the hell is wrong with you? Ronald barked, pushing past me into my living room as if he owned the place. Elaine stormed in behind him, lips pursed in disgust. Then Brittany, her mascara smudged and hair frazzled. You humiliated us, she screamed. We waited 3 hours. Get out of my house. My voice sliced through the chaos like a blade. They all froze. Excuse me. Ronald choked out. This is my home, I said calmly. And you 3 need to leave. Elaine stepped forward, her voice icy. You clearly don't understand the consequences of your behavior, Raymond. My husband knows everyone in this city. Everyone. We can make this vary. A lesson. I interrupted, meeting her stare without blinking. That's what today was. A lesson. Brittany scoffed. Who do you think you are to teach? The man who stopped being your personal bank account, I snapped. And your chauffeur. And your repairman. And your ATM. Ronald jabbed a finger in my chest, close enough to threaten, but not close enough to touch. You're making a big mistake, he growled. A very public mistake. It already is, I said, and I slammed the door. For the first time in years, my house felt clean, airy, free from the thick, suffocating presence of entitlement. But as I settled back in my recliner, I knew one thing. This war was only beginning. 3 days passed in a haze of cold mornings, quiet evenings, and the calm certainty that something bigger was coming. I'd stopped flinching when my phone buzzed. I ignored Evan's calls, Brittany's frantic texts, and even the unknown numbers that tried to slip past my filters. I knew what was coming next, and when it arrived, it hit like a slap. That Thursday morning, I stepped onto my porch with a steaming mug of coffee and picked up the Spokane Tribune from mailbox. I hadn't subscribed to it in years. It was old habit, more than anything else, to fetch the paper and toss it on the counter. But today, something felt different. I opened it casually until my hand froze on page 3. My own face stared back at me. A photo of me from my construction company's website, 5 years outdated, printed in grainy black and white next to a headline that twisted my stomach. Boise man abandons elderly couple at airport during holiday weather alert. I read it twice before the words started making sense. And when they did, anger didn't come, not right away. First came disbelief, then a slow, cold burn. The article painted Ronald and Elaine Pierce as helpless, shivering victims, a retired couple in their late 60s, left stranded for hours in dangerous, stormy conditions. Stormy conditions? It had been 45 degrees and sunny. My name was mentioned 5 times. My erratic behavior, my increasingly unstable communication, my questionable treatment of family. They even suggested I might be experiencing cognitive decline. I let the paper fall onto the kitchen table. They wanted war. They had chosen war. And they were amateurs. I picked up the paper again, scanning the byline. By Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor. I didn't know her, but someone did. And that someone had made a phone call. I folded the paper neatly, too neatly, and set it aside as my mind clicked into a mode I hadn't used since running my construction business in my younger years. Back then, strategy wasn't optional. Reputation wasn't optional. Survival wasn't optional. The Pierces thought they'd embarrass me. They thought this story would bury me. They didn't understand that I'd spent decades navigating contractors, inspectors, and business competitors who would happily lie, cheat, and undercut to get ahead. Compared to them, Ronald and Elaine were children. I sat at my computer and started typing names. Ronald Pierce, Elaine Pierce, Brittany Pierce Keller, Evan Keller, asterisk asterisk. Then I searched the author. Patricia Morrison. I found her within minutes. Her Facebook, her LinkedIn, her articles. She'd lived in Boise for 15 years. She'd written pieces on holiday decor, local charity galas, restaurant reviews. No banking connections. No political connections. No obvious ties. Which meant the connection wasn't her. But her editor? That was another story. 5 minutes later, I had the answer. 3 mutual business associations between Ronald Pierce and Patricia's editor. He'd called in a favor. A big one. The article was never about truth or journalism. It was a hit job. A strategic character assassination. My jaw tightened. Not from fear, but from recognition. For the first time since this mess began, I respected my enemies. They weren't just rude or entitled. They were dangerous. But they underestimated the wrong man. That afternoon, I opened the manila folder again. This time, not with shame or grief. This time with purpose. Down payment, $41,000. Mortgage payments, $174,000. Kitchen remodel, $15,500. Flooring upgrades, $9,800. Energy efficient windows, $6,200. Various bills and emergencies, $11,000. And those were just the big entries. There were dozens of smaller ones, each one a cut that eventually drained me dry. I spread the pages across my dining table. 5 years of quiet sacrifice laid out like evidence. But this wasn't evidence of my foolishness. It was evidence of their fraud. Step by step, I built a timeline, dates, receipts, mortgage transfers, utilities, repairs. Then I pulled up all the photos Brittany proudly posted on social media over the years. New kitchen reveal. My money. Finally upgraded our floors. My money. Hosting game night in our beautiful home. My money. Date night at the Willow. So grateful life brought us here. Paid for with my emergency loan after Evan forgot to pay the power bill. Every bragging post was proof. Every smile was funded by a man they barely respected. Every achievement they flaunted came from my back, my sweat, my retirement money. I printed everything. Then again. 12 sets in total. Because Brittany's Facebook told me exactly how many guests she'd invited for Christmas dinner. 12. I placed each set into its own envelope. The plan was forming, clear and sharp. This wasn't impulsive revenge. It wasn't petty retaliation. This was justice. The kind that taught people who lived off others exactly what the truth looked like. Christmas Eve. The day was freezing cold and spectacularly clear. I put on a navy suit I hadn't worn since Lydia's funeral. Pressed, polished, professional. A man ready to speak truth. At 6:30 p.m., I loaded my briefcase with the envelopes and drove to Evan and Brittany's neighborhood, a pristine subdivision filled with SUVs and immaculate lawns. Their house glowed like it thought it was the centerpiece of a winter magazine spread. I parked across the street. Through the dining room window, I saw the guests already seated, 12 well-dressed people sipping wine, the table set with gold chargers and linen napkins folded into shapes too fancy to eat off. Perfect. 6:45 p.m. I walked across the street. The door was unlocked. Of course it was. Brittany loved flaunting how safe her neighborhood was, as if crime didn't exist for people with white shutters and matching porch wreaths. I stepped inside quietly. Their laughter echoed from the dining room. Then a woman's voice, older, pointed, said, "But sweetheart, that's not how our family does Christmas. Our family." The words cut deeper than any insult ever could. I turned the corner. 12 heads snapped toward me. Brittany's wine glass froze midair. Evan's face drained of color. Ronald and Elaine looked like they'd swallowed their drinks raw. I walked in with the calm of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Good evening," I said. "Hope you don't mind if I join your Christmas celebration." "Raymond," Brittany sputtered, "you need to leave immediately. You're causing a scene." "Am I?" I asked, placing my briefcase on their marble sideboard. "I think your guests deserve to know the truth." I opened the briefcase. 12 envelopes stared up at the shocked room. "What is this?" asked a woman I didn't recognize, likely one of Elaine's social acquaintances. "Financial history," I said. "Receipts. 5 years of payments. Mortgage transfers. Renovations. Bills. Everything I personally funded so this family could live the lifestyle they show off." I moved around the table, placing an envelope in front of each guest. Paper rustled. Eyes widened. Someone gasped. Another whispered, "Oh my God." That's private," Brittany stammered. "Not anymore," I said. "You made it public when you used the newspaper to attack me." I pulled out a copy of the article from the Spokane Tribune and held it in the air. "You all saw this, right?" I asked the room. Several nodded cautiously. "Did they tell you they banned me from Christmas? That they told me I wasn't appropriate for their traditions? That they expected me to pick up her parents from the airport after excluding me?" Nervous glances. Ronald stood. "Raymond, you planted the newspaper story," I interrupted. "You used your business connections. You lied about being stranded in a winter storm that didn't exist." A man near the end of the table cleared his throat. "I remember that day," he said. "It was warm, sunny." "Interesting," I replied, "because according to this article, I abandoned 2 frail senior citizens in blizzard conditions." Elaine slammed her hand on the table. "This is harassment." "This is truth," I corrected. Brittany's face crumpled. "Raymond, please. This is a family matter." "No," I said sharply. "This stopped being a family matter the moment you dragged my name through the press." A woman in pearls shook her head slowly. "Brittany, this is awful. All of it." Another guest chimed in. "You let him pay all this? And then you humiliated him publicly. It's more complicated than—" "No," I cut in. "It's not." I pointed at the floor beneath their chairs. "This house stands because of me. Every board, every tile, every fixture, and the one condition you set." I looked directly at Brittany. "That I stay quiet, stay small, stay grateful." I grabbed a final envelope from my briefcase and tossed it onto the table. "This is the real story, the one you didn't want printed." As I turned toward the doorway, the room erupted. Voices rose, confused, angry, accusatory. Arguments broke out. Someone shouted Ronald's name. Elaine demanded someone fix this. Brittany begged Evan to do something. Evan just sat there, frozen, ashamed, small. It was the most beautiful Christmas music I'd heard in years. I stepped out into the cold night air, my breath fogging in front of me. Justice, I'd learned, was quiet, but its impact wasn't. And the next storm, the real one, was still on its way. 3 days passed after the Christmas Eve confrontation. Quiet, almost eerily so. Not a single knock. Not one phone call from Brittany or her parents. Not even Evan. They were licking their wounds, recalibrating, plotting their next move. I knew that type of silence. It wasn't remorse. It was strategy. I went about my days with an ease I hadn't felt in years. I fixed my porch light, replaced the air filter in my furnace, bought myself good groceries, fresh produce, real coffee, decent cuts of meat. Things I hadn't indulged in because my spare money always rushed out the door to keep Evan and Brittany's lifestyle intact. But by the following Monday, the next strike arrived. And this time they escalated. I was on my second cup of morning coffee when I unfolded the Spokane Tribune and nearly choked. Page 3 again. Center column. Bold headline. Community reacts to airport incident as businessman's behavior raises questions. My stomach tightened. Not because I was afraid, but because I recognized the pattern. This wasn't random. It was coordinated. They had doubled down. The article recapped the first story, then added new concerns from anonymous sources about my temper, my emotional volatility, and how I'd been acting strangely in public. Anonymous sources, right? Every quote was a whisper passed through Brittany's family. Every insinuation was an attempt to smear me deeper, push the narrative harder, bury the truth beneath a mountain of lies before it caught up to them. But they still didn't understand. I hadn't even started yet. I set the paper aside, took a slow sip of my coffee, and felt something unfamiliar but welcome settle into my chest. Confidence. For the first time in a long time, I knew exactly who I was and exactly who they were. And I wasn't afraid of a damn thing. That afternoon, I spent 3 straight hours at my desk. Not out of anger, out of precision. I opened my laptop and began building a file. An enormous, carefully organized digital dossier. Every receipt, every mortgage payment, every text from Evan asking for support, every email from Brittany begging for a temporary loan, every photo of their new furniture, new appliances, new flooring, all purchased on my dime. I scanned my physical records into PDFs. I converted bank statements into spreadsheets. I cataloged social media screenshots, highlighting every brag Brittany ever posted about her personal achievements. Then came the newspaper articles. I annotated them line by line. Weather report the day of the blizzard. Screenshot, sunny, 45 degrees. Lie, claim that they were stranded for hours. Timestamped voicemails from Brittany at 2:47, 3:30, and 4:15. Lie, accusation that I'd been unstable. 5 years of consistent monthly payments, exact to the dollar. Lie. When I finished, I sat back. It was a masterpiece of truth. Not for the courts. Not for the police. For the court of public opinion. The same one they dragged me into. If they wanted a war fought with reputation, I would give them the kind of exposure they couldn't survive. That evening, I received the first text in days. From a number I didn't recognize. Raymond, we need to talk. Please. E.K. ***. E.K. Evan Keller. He hadn't used his actual number. Brittany was controlling his phone again, or he was too ashamed to message me openly. Either way, I ignored it. The next day, a call came. Unknown number. I let it ring to voicemail. Then I heard his voice, shaky, small, desperate. Dad, it's me. Please don't hang up if you hear this. I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know about the second article. They're losing their minds over what happened on Christmas Eve. Mom and Dad are furious with Brittany. Brittany's furious with me. Everyone's blaming everyone. He exhaled shakily. I need to see you. Please. I didn't delete the voicemail, but I didn't call back. Not yet. Not until the next move was played. 2 days later, a letter arrived. Certified mail. Thick envelope. I recognized the logo immediately. First Mountain Mortgage Services. I tore it open and skimmed the bolded words. Notice of default. Final demand for payment. Their mortgage had fallen behind. 3 missed payments. $8,700 in arrears. 14 days to make the account current. Or the house, the one I'd helped them buy, upgrade, expand, would begin the foreclosure process. I let the letter fall onto the table. It didn't bring joy. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Just inevitability. Choices have consequences. Their choices were finally coming home. My phone buzzed again that evening. This time, the knock came with it. A soft tap, tap, tap that carried fear more than anger. I opened the door. Evan stood there, and he looked broken. Not physically, emotionally. Like a man who'd been dragged through 3 months of hell. His shoulders slumped. His eyes were shadowed. His clothes were wrinkled. He looked older than me. Dad, he whispered. I stepped aside. He entered my living room slowly, as though expecting to be thrown out. His eyes traveled over the new recliner, the cleaned-up walls, the updated light fixtures I'd finally been able to afford. It looks nice in here, he murmured. It's what happens, I said evenly, when you spend your money on your own life. He winced. We sat. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he folded his hands and started quietly. Dad, I'm sorry. I waited. I'm sorry for Christmas, for the newspaper articles, for letting Brittany and her parents talk about you the way they did, for not standing up for you, for not seeing what was happening, and for taking so much from you without giving anything back. His voice cracked. I should have been better. Yes, I thought. He should have. But this wasn't the moment to say that. Instead, I asked, "Do you know how much you took from me, Evan?" He nodded. Brittany added it up. After the Christmas dinner disaster. Over 200,000. 237,000 for $168, I said. Give or take. He looked down at his hands. I know. The house. I asked. We're losing it, he whispered. We can't make the payments without. He hesitated. Without your help. Dad, he said softly. We're drowning. I nodded once. Slowly. You know why? I asked. He swallowed. Because we lived beyond our means. No. He looked up. Because, I said, you expected others to pay the price for your comfort. He didn't argue. He didn't make excuses. He just stared at the floor. Is there any chance you can help us? He asked finally. Help me? Help Brittany? Help us save our home. His voice was the voice of a child. A scared boy. Not a grown man. For a moment, I just looked at him, really looked at him. My son. My only child. A man shaped too deeply by the influence of people who never valued the things I valued. A man who'd allowed himself to become small, diminished, reliant, ashamed. A man who still didn't understand the lesson. No, I said gently. He looked stunned. We're family, he whispered. Family, I said calmly, doesn't put conditions on love. Doesn't choose appearances over connection. Doesn't force someone to feel lesser. Doesn't use someone until they're broke. He closed his eyes. And family sure as hell doesn't ban their father from Christmas. He nodded slowly, tears welling. Dad, I know I messed up. I want to fix it. Good, I said. Start by fixing your own life. He opened his eyes. What do I do? You work? I said. You budget. You stop pretending you're better than the reality you live in. You sell the house if you have to. You rent. You rebuild. You stand on your own legs instead of leaning on others until they collapse. Will you forgive me? He whispered. I already did, I said. But forgiveness doesn't include funding your mistakes. A tear slid down his cheek. He stood slowly, like a man carrying a weight he finally recognized. Dad, he said at the door. When you stood up to them on Christmas Eve, I was embarrassed and angry, but also proud. I nodded. Good. Maybe that means there's hope for you yet. He left quietly, and for the first time in years, I didn't worry about my son. He had finally taken his first step into adulthood. When the door clicked closed behind him, I poured myself a glass of whiskey, stepped out onto the back porch, and breathed in the cool Idaho air. The future felt different now. Wide open. Peaceful. Mine. I felt the weight of years fall from my shoulders. For the first time since Lydia passed, I felt like I could start over. My phone buzzed. A message from my late wife's sister, Rosa. Dinner Sunday. Kids want to show you their projects. Come early. Asterisk, asterisk. I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. Real family, I'd realized, wasn't created by blood. It was chosen. Daily. Intentionally. And the people who wanted me, truly wanted me, were the ones who deserved my time. My money. My presence. My love. Everything else? Just expensive theater. And I was done buying tickets. 2 weeks passed after Evan's visit. The Idaho winter was beginning to loosen its grip, and the air had a faint warmth to it, the kind that hints at spring but isn't quite ready to commit. In all that time, I heard nothing more from Brittany or her parents. Not a spiteful message. Not a demand. Not even one of their trademark guilt trips. They had gone silent. And silence, from people like them, is never surrender. It's retreat, regrouping, planning a new angle. But I didn't worry about them anymore. Their chapter in my life was done, and I had already started writing the next one. 3 months after Christmas Eve, on a cool Tuesday morning, my doorbell rang. I was in the middle of sanding a new set of shelves for my office, something I'd been wanting to do for years but never had the time or money for. I wiped my hands on a rag and opened the door. The mail carrier handed me a certified envelope. First Mountain Mortgage, final notice. I didn't open it right away. I didn't need to. I already knew what it would say. Still, I sat at the kitchen table, The same table where I'd sorted 5 years of receipts and slit the envelope open. Foreclosure proceedings scheduled to begin in 14 days. Balance overdue, $8,700. Total payoff required, $341,000. Asterisk, asterisk. I set the letter down gently. Not with satisfaction, not with anger, just acceptance. Choices have consequences. And when people refuse to learn the lesson gets delivered anyway. My phone buzzed later that afternoon. Not a call, a voicemail from Evan. His voice cracked halfway through. Dad, I don't know what to do. Brittany's packing. Her parents are talking about lawyers. I think they blame me for everything. I can't make the payments. We're losing the house. I'm losing everything. He took a breath, so shaky it sounded painful. I don't know who I am without all of this.